Hello. Good morning, everyone. Now, welcome to week 9. This is our last week of lectures. I just have an announcement to make with regards to deadlines in earning marks for your multiple choice questions, your short answer questions. Alberta will come online with me on Thursday for a little bit to talk about the exam as well. And so for now, I want to remind you that this announcement is on Moodle, but I do want to point out to you because I have had students emailing me saying that they are unable to access Playconomics, which is actually really, really worrying for me because this is week 9. Your week 10 deadline to earn marks for your multiple choice answers is on Tuesday, the 18th of November at midday. Please take note, this is midday, this is not 5 p.m. because a lot of the assessments, the cutoff is at 5 p.m. But the week 10 deadline to earn marks for your multiple choice question answers is Tuesday, 18th of November at midday. The week 10 deadline to earn marks from your short answer question answers, including your game short answer questions, is on Wednesday, so the day after, on the 19th of November at midday. And the week 10 deadline to earn marks for marking the short answer question answers is on Friday, the 21st of November at midday. So at the moment, this is all I'm going to talk about. We're going to talk about the exam on Thursday. You have the information there in front of you and on Moodle, but we'll talk more about it on Thursday. But for now, please work on your week 10 deadlines for your multiple choice question and your short answer questions. It's very, very important because they comprise 45% of the marks. All right, I am going to move to today's topic. Now, I didn't want to show the PD or the PowerPoint for game theory. We've went through that in detail. If you have any issues, please go and look it up in the previous recording. I'm sure that will be really helpful. We ended off with Battle of the Sexes. We talked about coordination games. We talked about how you coordinate if you both want to do an activity together, and if you want to go on a date together, you can't play. You can't actually do different things to go on a date together. We also talked about Nash equilibrium and what is Nash equilibrium, and having to check every single quadrant. Now, I really do need to move on, and we're going to go back and look at externalities where we stopped last week. Okay, with externalities, so apologies, all the annotations from the last time disappeared because I stupidly opened the online lecture slides for my live lectures and I drew all over them, and so I thought I'm going to start fresh, whether it be by recap or continue from there. So that's why this particular slide, even though we have gone through some of it, there are no annotations on it. Hi, Trent. Hello. Thank you for being there to support this session. I really, really appreciate you being there. Now, here in this particular unit, we are looking at externalities. We're going to talk about positive consumption externalities and negative consumption externalities. And I believe last week we introduced Maya. We said that with Maya, Maya likes perfume, and Maya derives marginal benefit from wearing perfume. That marginal benefit has also a marginal cost attached to it, because she has to go out and buy the perfume and pay for the perfume. Now, how much perfume should Maya wear? If we're only looking at Maya per se, she's going to use a cost-benefit principle to compare her marginal cost of putting on the perfume versus the marginal benefit that she gets from the additional unit of perfume that she's putting on. And she's going to make that decision of how much perfume to wear, where marginal cost equals marginal benefit. However, we're going to introduce another character. We're going to introduce another person, Benji. Benji, imagine Benji is in a lecture theater and Benji is sitting next to Maya. And Benji really loves Maya's perfume. Sounds really creepy. I even feel creepy saying it, coming out of me. But, sometimes we all love sitting next to someone. I often comment, "Oh, I really like your scent." So let's just take it that Benji really loves the perfume that Maya has chosen for that day. And therefore, Maya's choice of putting on perfume is having an external effect on Benji, who is sitting next to Maya. Therefore, what we're going to want to do is to maximize the social surplus. The social surplus is the total benefit of both Maya and Benji. So the total benefit of both Maya and Benji combined is your maximum, your social surplus that we're trying to maximize. Then the cost benefit analysis will be more comparing the marginal cost with Maya's marginal benefit and Benji's marginal benefit, and therefore we come up with this equation. This is an example of positive consumption externality. Now, interestingly, I think I mentioned this last week, there are fragrance-free zones in North America, such as Nova Scotia in Canada, where comprehensive fragrance-free policies are executed in hospitals, schools, public offices. So, this doesn't apply to everyone, because there are people who actually probably do not like the smell of perfume. Now, when we talk at positive consumption externalities, positive consumption externality represents a benefit that accrues to someone who is not involved in the consumption of a given good. So, what is an example before I go through the slide? Going to the gym and getting in shape. So you might feel really, really healthy. You might, look really good. But from a externality perspective, you are also, because you are healthier, you probably get sick less, and you are decreasing healthcare costs. Okay. If we ride a bike to uni instead of driving, I'm terrible at this externality. We will decrease pollution and will decrease congestion on the streets, because for those of you who have to get to UNSW sometimes, you will realize that the roads coming to uni is really, really congested at the moment. I don't live far from the uni. Essentially, it could take me 15-20 minutes max to walk to the uni. but I can guarantee you it takes me that same amount of time driving to the uni, which is really terrible. So I not only would decrease congestion on the streets, but I would decrease pollution. Only problem, you put me on the bike, I probably kill myself. Now, getting a vaccine, protecting yourself, but also protecting others, including Benji, who's sitting next to you in class, that's also a positive consumption externalities. Therefore, they're really important things that we do that have a marginal external benefit for society when we engage with them. Now, you know how I talked about the definition? I said accrued to someone who's not involved in the consumption of the good. A very good example in this case is Benji. Benji didn't put on any perfume on himself. He wasn't the one who consumed the perfume, but he is still affected by the perfume that Maya has put on herself. So Benji is not involved in the consumption of the good, but the benefit accrued to Benji. So this is at the core of a lot of things that we see in the real world, like climate change, like vaccinations. And these are all very, very important topics that we discuss each and every day. Now, I'm going to go into the more detailed part of this concept of positive consumption externality. Now, let's have a look. We'll start with the horizontal interpretation of the demand curve. Because in my next slide, the market price is at $8, I'm going to go back one slide. I'm going to start here and say, okay, if we use the horizontal interpretation at the price of $8, so I am choosing $8 because later on we are setting the market price at $8. And we go horizontally and we reach the end, we come down, and we know that at the price of $8, Maya will consume 4 units of perfume. If we, on the other hand, decide to use the vertical interpretation, let me just erase this so that, I'm doing this as if this is the first time that we're talking about this curve, but instead of using the horizontal interpretation, I'm now going to use the vertical interpretation. So if I'm going to consume the 4th unit, so therefore the marginal benefit of consuming the 4th unit of perfume, so I'm going to look at the 4th unit, then I'm going to go up. I'm going to go up. And the reservation price for Maya is $8. That's the price that she's willing to pay. Now, the first drop of perfume that Maya puts on, your marginal benefit here would be 11. So if you look here, first drop, the marginal benefit is up there. That graph is also incomplete. We're going to do the same for the other graphs, but if we extend that a little bit, sorry, I'm kind of drawing with my hand, not still. So freehand drawing, I start shaking when I'm trying to do something really accurate. So at this particular point here, not sure if you can see it, but in this blue line here, my social demand curve is here. So when I am at unit 2, sorry, I should have used the blue one. When I'm at unit 2, my social demand curve should be 10, 11, 12. And when I'm at unit 1, that's my private demand curve in blue, but my social demand curve should move to about 13. Don't know why it won't change for me. Okay, so we need to actually complete that. Apologies that that particular graph is not complete. So you got to put 2 more lines for your stepped social demand curve. Otherwise, that is actually an incomplete graph. Okay, so at 1 unit, we know that your private demand curve, your marginal benefit is at 11, therefore pushing up the private value of Maya to the social value by 2. That means that the social value is 13. Okay. Now, why is externalities creating a complication in the market? Because in a perfectly competitive market, where the price of perfume is at $8, it would indicate that the quantity demanded by Maya for 4 units is the optimal quantity. So let's go to the next graph, and unfortunately, I need to fix this one again. Okay, so that's 11, 12, 13. Not that it really matters, but I'm just really being pedantic here because, you know, I find it really difficult. Maybe I have a little bit of OCD because I just can't stand it when it's not complete. So apologies for that. Now, in a perfectly competitive market where the price is at $8, this is your market price here. Okay, that would indicate that the quantity demanded should be at 4. That's Maya's quantity demanded. That's the optimal quantity that Maya will consume. So this is a really straightforward standard demand curve explanation, even though we're using a step demand curve. So there's nothing tricky about it. There's nothing different about it. What is the optimum quantity if we also consider that Benji is benefiting from Maya putting on some perfume? So if we do the same and we start at $8, and now because we're including Benji, we're going to go, and we're going to stop at where the social demand curve is. We're going to come down, and socially, we are going to, so if the social demand curve would also include Benji's marginal benefit, so the optimum quantity for society is 6 units. So 6 units is socially optimum quantity, and 4 units is the optimum private quantity. Now, at 6 units, this should not be surprising that from the perspective of society, we also consider Benji's benefit. Therefore, Maya, by thinking of herself only, she decided to consume 4 units of the perfume, and that is what society would like, because society will also consider Benji's benefit. Therefore, when you go to the gym and you decrease healthcare costs, later in life, what happens is you save taxes for people into the future because, you know, you are healthier and you're going to need the healthcare system less. You're saving money for the rest of us taxpayers, because there's only a certain amount of tax. We pay the tax, the government pulls it together, and the money has to go somewhere. So if people don't get sick and people are healthier, then we do save on healthcare costs because it's something that is a relatively steep cost. So what this means is that there is an external benefit from your action that you're not internalizing. What we're doing has an external benefit. Maybe society, as a result of that, would like you to exercise more because that's really important for everybody, not just you. Now, going back to Benji and Maya, where Maya is doing what's best for herself, it's not achieving the socially optimal quantity because the socially optimal quantity is 6 units. If she does whatever she wants for herself, she's only going to consume 4 units. Now, remember also this, that, somebody in my life class asked me afterwards, so why is it that Maya, if she knows about this, one, she probably doesn't, but if she does, could she just use 2 more units? The thing about that is then Maya's marginal benefit wouldn't equal marginal cost, because remember, there is a cost of purchasing the perfume. The more she used at any point in time, or every time she uses it, the faster she's going to use it up. So she has to balance the marginal cost equals marginal benefit as the principle that she uses to determine how much she uses it. Okay. If she uses 6 units, she might not enjoy it as much, or she will enjoy it for a shorter period of time. And so if we look at the graph with the blue and the red curves, where the private demand curve and the social demand curve, if you want to look at it from a normal downward sloping curve that we draw, this will be the demand curve. This will be the private demand curve. And that will be the social demand curve. And that demand curve, the distance between the two, that's your external benefit. Okay, that's your external benefit. And that is the same here. All the way up those two, which is why I draw it all the way up to $13, because the distance has to be the same, because your marginal external benefit is at $2. So the difference going up socially has to be a difference with $2. Okay. Nobody has questions yet. This chat is still very quiet. Please make sure you ask questions if you have any. Let's go back to the diagram. Now, we know that the surplus for Maya, when the price is $8, is 4 units. And then we're going to look at the area below the curve. We're going to talk about what is the surplus for Maya. Now, let's see. We'll use blue. Now, this is your demand curve. And so the area below the curve is what we're shading blue. This shaded blue area is surplus for Maya. Okay, so that's Maya's surplus. Now, let's have a look at the surplus for society. We know that the social demand curve is in red. Let's see if I can do this efficiently. So that is my social demand curve. That pink shaded area at the optimal amount for society, which is 6 units, the area below the demand curve and above the price, which is shaded in pink, is the surplus for society. Now, if you look at the two areas, I'm pretty sure you could tell me that the area shaded in pink is greater than the area shaded in blue. Okay? So therefore, we have extra surplus that Benji is receiving from this. The difference between the private demand curve and the social demand curve is what I am going to shade in purple. That's your social, that's your, oh God, I can't talk. That's the extra surplus that Benji is receiving. So the area below that purple bit is Maya's benefit, which you saw identified shaded in blue in the previous graph. So then what is the problem? The problem then becomes that if Maya is consuming 4 units, society wants her to consume 6 units. And you will then get the pink and purple shaded area as your surplus for society. But if Maya is only consuming 4 units, because that's all her cost-benefit analysis tells her that's optimal. So at 4 units here, we've got to go up. We end up truncating the consumption at 4 units, meaning that we lose this. And that becomes your dead weight loss. Okay? So in the context of this example, the surplus would be maximized at 6 units, but it is not optimal for Maya to consume 6 units. It is optimal only for Maya to consume 4 units, which is stated in the graph with just the private demand curve. Now, is there a way for society to solve this problem? Now, this is very, very important. That is there a way we can fix this dead weight loss that has been created because of the externality? And in this particular case, the answer is yes. We think that this problem will take care of itself through private negotiation. Let's say that Benji goes to Maya and says that he likes her perfume. This is quite reasonable because there are only 2 people involved here, and so they can start negotiating. Maybe Maya says that she's going to wear 2 extra units of perfume, 6 units instead of 4, in exchange for Benji paying $2 for each extra unit, because we know that the marginal external benefit is $2. Okay? Essentially, what Maya is saying is that, Benji, you have a positive externality of $2 for each unit of perfume that I'm putting on, and I'm going to charge you, Benji, for this benefit. And I'm therefore going from consuming 4 units to 6 units. This would be Pareto efficient. Why? Because, let me use this graph and then I'll show you the equation in the later slides. Because at marginal benefit, let's see if I can find a color that I haven't used yet. Maybe the dark blue will change, will show. Let's have a look at this. At the marginal benefit of the 5th unit, okay, here at the 5th unit, if we go up the 5th unit, at $7, okay? The marginal benefit of the 5th unit is $7, plus the transfer from Maya to Benji is $2. And so marginal benefit of 7 plus transfer of $2, 7 plus 2 is 9. So at unit 5 here, $9 is greater than $8. So we are, Maya is quite happy to take the $2 from Benji and definitely add on one extra unit. Okay, so increase consumption by Maya with one extra unit. So moving from fourth unit to the fifth unit. But if we look at the 6 units, okay, so we talk about consuming unit number 6, we go up. Marginal benefit is $6. Plus the transfer from Benji to Maya for $2 gives you $8. So $8 equals $8, which is your market price. This is market price. And so Benji is indifferent in this scenario, but Maya is happy. So she's quite happy to consume 6 unit, which is the socially optimal amount. She gets paid by Benji $2. She's kind of happy, and both parties are happy. In this scenario, there was no need for government intervention, and private negotiation came to a Pareto efficient solution, in the sense that everybody is better off. Now, let's look at the slides, because I did mention it in the slides. So we talked about private negotiation. We're trying to get rid of our dead weight loss. So the marginal benefit for the 5th unit is $7. The transfer is $2. And so the market price is $8. 9 is greater than 8. Yep, we will consume. At the 6th unit, marginal benefit is $6. Transfer price is $2. 8 equals 8. Benji accepts this because the price that Maya asks is exactly equal to the external benefit of consuming 2 more units. There's no government intervention. So we then call this the Coase theorem. Now, let's see what the Coase theorem says. The Coase theorem says that if trade in an externality is possible, which is what we were talking about between Maya and Benji, and very importantly, and there are no transaction costs, very, very important. This is something that you are going to be tested in the exam. It's a very popular exam question. So, if trade in an externality is possible, which is what we saw in Maya and Benji, Maya can charge Benji for the extra perfume that she is putting on. Only if trade of the externality is possible. And there are no transaction costs. So it's quite easy to reach an agreement. Now, what are transaction costs? Before I move on, what are transaction costs? Transaction costs are the costs of bargaining. Or enforcing agreements, or, and you can write this down yourself because I ran out of space. Actually, I'm going to write it up there. Gathering info. These are all examples. Now, the cost of bargaining. Most of the time, these are legal fees. And if there are a lot of affected parties, the cost of bargaining increases. And in reality, bargaining is often very, very expensive. And that's why with the Coase theorem, this only works if there are no transaction costs. But if the Coase theorem is in play, bargaining will lead to an effective outcome regardless of the initial property rights. Now, I find it really hard to explain this using Maya and Benji, what allocation of property rights is. So I'm going to give you a slightly different example, which I think you would understand the Coase theorem better. Imagine a factory letting out dirty, smelly smoke. And imagine that nearby there is a restaurant. Quite a nice restaurant. The food is excellent. But the problem that this restaurant has is the smell coming from the factory. The smell, the pollution, the dirt. All horrible things. So, negative externality. If the restaurant has the right to clean air, the right to clean air for the restaurant is the property right that they have. The right to clean air. Okay? Then the factory must stop polluting or pay the restaurant to tolerate the smoke. Okay? So if the restaurant has the right to clean air, which is then seen as their property right, then the factory must stop polluting or pay the restaurant to tolerate the smoke. However, if the factory has the right to pollute, which is their property right, then the restaurant can pay the factory to reduce their emissions. Okay, so this is how Coase theorem could work. As long as the restaurant and the factory can bargain with no transaction costs, they'll reach a deal that maximizes total value. For example, the factory might install a filter to trap the smoke, to clean the smoke. If it's cheaper than the losses that the restaurant is making, both parties are happy. We reach a Pareto efficient scenario. So this is really, really important. So when we look at the Coase theorem, we say, okay, there are a few key things that I want to point out. Sorry, I'm trying to... Okay, finally got into my second slide. Now, couple of things. As a quick summary, when we talk about Coase theorem, the problem is externalities. The solution here, and this is just me summarizing what the Coase theorem is, only because I know that that's going to be an exam question there. Private negotiation. Condition: no or very low transaction cost. Outcome: Pareto efficient. and policy implication is less or no need for government intervention. Okay, so essentially that's a summary of what we just talked about in terms of the Coase theorem. Now, whilst you might be writing this down or whatever it might be, I'm going to leave this on the screen for a few seconds, a few extra seconds. Okay. Now, the next slide that we're going to look at, we're going to talk about examples of consumption externalities, positive consumption externalities. I used a lot of this previously as well, so it's not something that you would not have seen. Now, the first example for positive consumption externalities are fitness activities. I said this earlier. If you go to the gym, you feel better, you feel healthier, and later in life costs less to society in terms of healthcare. I said to my class, I said, well, you might feel better, you might not feel better straight away, but you will feel better eventually. I usually go on a really long walk once a year. It's a charity walk, 35 kilometers on a coast, and I would complain the whole way. But I know that one, I'm doing good for a charitable organization. I'm raising funds for them. I'm making people aware of the organization that I'm working for. I feel better maybe a week after I'm stopped being sore because I've walked for 35 kilometers. Actually, I feel healthier after that, probably more mentally than physically. But I know that with that little bit of exercise, because then I have an aim, I need to then prepare for that walk. I can't just get up and walk 35 kilometers. I need to kind of prep myself, go for, a few kilometers walk every week. And so that was my motivation. And the point of the externality is that later in life, hopefully, that because I've been slowly exercising, that it will cost less to society in terms of my consumption of the healthcare costs. Okay, so hopefully my healthcare costs will decrease as a result of that. So how much money can we save if everybody is in great shape and really, really healthy? Vaccinations is the other one. It's a very good example, especially during the period of COVID. You don't just protect yourself, but you also get the COVID vaccine to protect other people. Mia just got her COVID vaccine. Her arm is really hurting. But she's going to get the benefit or the protection against COVID. But she is also protecting Benji, who's sitting next to her, enjoying her perfume, but she's also protecting Benji from COVID. Now then we extend that theory. We say, okay, Maya might get only 2 shots. She's just like, I get my first shot, my second shot, I'm done. And that's where her marginal cost equals the marginal benefit. And when we talk about the marginal cost, I'm talking about the discomfort. I might, have headaches. I might feel sick as a result of the vaccination. So there is a cost to me. For me, it's the fear of needles. The idea that I'm going to go and let somebody poke something into my arm, that's a huge cost. But the marginal benefit is Mia is also protecting Benji, not just herself. Imagine that Mia has grandparents that she lives with. They're old, they're 90 years old, and Mia wants to protect her grandparents. And so Mia might get more shots. She might get every shot that is available to her because she wants to protect her grandparents. So the point that we're trying to make here is that there is an external benefit that accrues, whether to Benji, to her grandparents, to her nieces and nephews. Her getting vaccinated is not only protecting herself, but all these other people. I want you to hold this thought because later in this lecture, I'm going to talk about a scenario where Coase theorem does not apply all the time. And that vaccination is a very good example where it fails. So hold that thought here under vaccinations because there's more than just one story. Let's just move on. The next one we're going to talk about is biking to work. I also mentioned that earlier, polluting less congestion. I can't say more to that. Then we focus on education. The more educated a society is, the more society benefits from it. Okay, so everybody could be educated and you have a personal benefit. You get a better job, you get paid more, but there are societal benefits because the more educated you are, you bring in advanced skills. So imagine, compare somebody who finished their education in primary school versus them finish their education in high school. I'm assuming you will agree with me that they will be a lot smarter. Not always, but they'll be a lot smarter. They'll have more skills that would have been taught to them. If you then compare a high school student with university students, like what you guys are doing, you're learning more skills. Decision making, boosting innovation, boosting efficiency, boosting innovation. You're making really good work choices. A more educated person would also make informed health choices. You are smart enough to say to yourself, I'm not going to eat as many lollies because it's going to give me diabetes. I'm going to eat a balanced diet because it's going to make me fat and give me all these health problems. And that educated decision that you take on your health will reduce the strain on the healthcare system. Lower crime rates, strong civic engagement, like you're more likely to vote, you're more likely to volunteer. I think I'm one of those people that do too much of that. And also advocate for policies that improve community welfare. We think more about other people, not just ourselves. And we are educated to understand that what we give will hopefully come back to us or the younger generation. I like the next one. The next one is an intergeneration uplift. If we are educated, our children, our peers benefit from the examples that we set and the resources and support. This is something that I say to my children all the time. I give you the resources. If you want to, my daughter is asking to take piano lessons at the moment. And the one thing I said to her the last few weeks since she brought this up, you need to go and practice without me hassling you. I don't want to get angry. I don't want to be nagging at you. I don't want to be yelling. But if you want it, I'm quite happy to provide the support, to provide the money for you to go and learn. And that is the thing. Through education, we know the importance of all these activities, and as a result of that, we support them. Resilience in crisis. Educated populations adapt better in shocks like a pandemic or climate change or economic downturns versus uneducated people. Social networking and fire protection services are the last two I would like to talk about. Enhancing communication, building communities, providing social awareness, expanding access to information and opportunities. These are all positive consumption externalities through social networking. Strengthening social ties and empowers collective action. That's why Facebook is so successful. We have communities of people that are set up and created and, joined together because of this. The last one that I'm going to use as an example is fire protection services. If your house is protected from a fire, if you live in a bushfire zone, if you don't clear your gutters for dried leaves and all of that, and your house gets engulfed in flames, your neighbor's house is in danger too. So when you do fire protection acts for your house, you are also protecting your neighbors. And these are all examples of positive consumption externalities. Now we're going to move on. We're going to move on to talk about negative production externality. So there's positive, there's always the opposite side. Excuse me. Now, we're going to meet Benji. We know Benji was the one that sits next to Maya and loves her perfume. But now Benji is in a different class. He's not sitting next to Maya, but Benji decided that during lunchtime, he's going to sell hot dogs outside the lecture theaters. Okay? And Benji incurs a marginal cost for producing these hot dogs. Now, where the marginal cost equals the marginal benefit, because Benji is an entrepreneur, that is how many hot dogs Benji is going to produce. But can you imagine that right outside the lecture theater, where I'm trying to deliver a lecture, but all these students who are trying to concentrate on economics now is smelling the smell of hot dogs. Not everybody likes the smell of hot dogs, and assuming that Maya disliked the smell. To her, that was pollution that Benji is producing. Okay? So Maya dislikes the pollution, and so Maya incurs an external marginal cost. Now, let's look at what we talked about this before. Remember, we looked at the marginal cost curve, and we say that, well, at the price P, we are going to produce at this quantity. So at this quantity here, P equals MC. Okay. Now, P, of course, is your marginal benefit. That's the point where marginal benefit equals marginal cost. Now, Maya has an externality. She hates it. So Maya hates it because one, she doesn't like the smell, and two, it's distracting her from the lecture. So if Benji is to produce the optimal quantity for society, Benji needs to include not only his marginal cost, but also the marginal cost to Maya. Negative production externality represents a cost incurred by someone not involved in the production of a given good. Benji is producing the good. Maya is suffering and therefore incurring a cost, but she's not selling hot dogs. Okay? Let's have a look at the graphs. We then have the graph of showing negative production externality. We're going to talk about the market price being 3. So I'm going to use this slide first. Let's use the vertical interpretation. At unit 3, we're going to go up. And the marginal cost of the third unit of hot dog is $3. Now we then talk about the private supply curve and the social supply curve. The social supply curve includes the marginal external cost for $1. So when we look at the third unit of production, the marginal cost for society is $4. Because Maya is experiencing a marginal cost of $1 for each hot dog produced. Okay. Now, imagine this. I do this a lot quicker because we already talked about this graph in terms of positive production externality. Now, imagine that Benji can sell his hot dog at the equilibrium price of $3. If we ask the question, how much should Benji produce if they are using the cost-benefit principle to maximize their profit? Well, the horizontal interpretation shows you that we're going to produce 3 units. So ideally, Benji would like to produce 3 units of hot dog. But we know that this is not socially optimal. Because at $3, we're then going in the social supply curve, we're going to produce 2 units. Because from the perspective of society where the price is $3, we would like to check where the market price is equal to the marginal cost for society, which is your social supply curve. Therefore, society wants Benji to produce less at 2 units, not 3. let's look at the surplus for a moment. We're going to say that the area below the supply curve, area above the supply curve and below the price. So we're going to go step, 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 below. So we're going to shade that green. Let's have a look. Sorry. Change color, sir. So your supply curve, area above the supply curve and below the area above the supply curve and below the price. Is that there? Okay. And so let me go back and talk about this slide again. The surplus for society, is the shaded area orange. The dead weight area, is this area shaded brown. This represents the dead weight loss, because your marginal benefit is less than your marginal cost. Marginal benefit less than marginal cost. So the unit we shouldn't produce, because remember earlier I told you the socially optimal quantity is 2, but the private optimal quantity is 3. So the bit that society we should not have produced is that brown shaded area. Compared with Benji's surplus, which is the green shaded area. In this case, Benji would produce a quantity that is too big, 3 units. But there is a simple way to solve this problem, like we did before with the perfume. There's only a market with 2 agents, so we do a private negotiation. Maya goes up to Benji and goes, I really hate your smell. No, that sounded wrong. I really hate the smell that your hot dogs is producing outside the lecture theater. To me, Benji, that is pollution. You're polluting the air, the clean air. You're distracting me from, concentrating in the lecture. I hate it. Benji could offer to reduce production by 1 unit. So instead of producing 3 units, he would produce 2 units in exchange for Maya paying him a compensation of $1. Now, Benji is better off with this deal because at $3, the marginal the marginal benefit of the 3rd unit, which is $3, and the marginal cost is also $3. Therefore, the surplus, right? The surplus is 0. Okay, surplus is 0. So he's really indifferent to producing. The social marginal cost is the marginal cost to Benji plus the marginal cost to Maya. So Benji's marginal cost is $3 plus minus marginal cost, which is $1, gives you a total marginal cost of $4. But we know that marginal benefit for Benji is $3. Therefore, your marginal benefit is less than your marginal cost. Therefore, the production in this scenario is socially inefficient. So what are we going to do here? We're going to use Coase theorems. Okay? We're going to say that if property rights are clearly defined here and transaction costs are non-existent or low, Benji and Maya can negotiate to internalize the externality. Now, Benji has the right to produce. He has the right to sell hot dogs. So Maya could pay Benji to stop producing. But Benji is indifferent at unit 3, so marginal benefit equals marginal cost. And so any payment greater than 0 from Maya to Benji will make Benji better off. And Maya will avoid that marginal external cost of $1. So long Maya offers Benji anything up to $1 and Benji accepts, then production will stop at a particular point, externality is avoided. Hey, Pareto efficient. There's no need for governments to get involved. Okay? And this is the application of the Coase theorem. Now, what are some other examples that we can talk about? Harmful production activities. Okay, I've already done those. We've talked about this already. Harmful production activities, global warming. Global warming is the biggest externality ever created in society in the history of mankind. And, it's one of those things that we're hoping that the younger generation would take very seriously, because the globe is getting warmer. Temperatures are increasing. And it is a result of all the consumption, all the things that we consume that is destroying the environment. Because I have children, I take things like, harmful production, harmful consumption. I take recycling very, very seriously, because this is all going to create a harmful effects for our environment and for our future generations. The second one that we talk about is excessive risk-taking. For banks, most of you would probably not have been born when this happened, the great financial crisis in 2008. In America, banks took excessive risks by aggressively lending to subprime borrowers that did not have the ability to repay the loan, and they were over leveraging through complex financial instruments. They were relying on short-term funding. All of this happening while underestimating the systemic risk and assuming that governments are going to bail them out and protect them. So in 2008, a lot of people, especially in America, but this, kind of escalated all over the world. I think Australia is probably the only country that was very minimally impacted on. But still, a lot of people lost a lot of money a lot of their savings. Imagine if you are 70, you're retired, and all the money in your bank account overnight disappeared. What are you going to do? You can't go out and get a full-time job anymore because you're old. It's the time of your life where you should be enjoying life and relaxing and going on holidays. And that's the problem when banks take too much risk. Overfishing, I think this is the one that, people don't often think about it. There are no property rights in the ocean. Therefore, we overfish. But the point that we're trying to make here is, as an individual, it is too big an issue. Any one of these issues, they're too big for individuals to negotiate. Individually, I don't have the ability to negotiate with industries regarding global warming. As an individual, I don't have the ability to negotiate with the banks regarding excessive risk-taking. I have no ability to negotiate with the fisheries about how much fish they're catching from the ocean. So the point I'm trying to make here is, as an individual, it's too big for us as individuals to negotiate because the cost of negotiation is humongous. Therefore, we on our own, we are unable to stop climate change. Even though we could do our bit to change the world, but we are unable to stop those negative externalities on our own. What am I heading towards? This is the point where I'm going to say, you know how in the past I talked about, hey, we don't need the government intervention. We don't want price ceilings. We don't want price floors. We don't want subsidies or taxation. And you guys are all bad, bad, bad. No. When we talk about externalities, this is when we say we need the government. We need the government to be responsible for this. We need the government to change these things. Because as a mere individual, we don't have the power or ability to change the world ourselves. The younger generation have a much better understanding on this, and there's a lot of pressure from young cohorts to get government accountable. And that is what economists want young people to do, to lobby the government. This cannot be solved at the individual level. Very, very important here. Let's look at it from a larger market, externalities in the larger market. Now, we see this and we say, okay, we know that this is your equilibrium point, and we know that this is your equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity. We did what we did before. We say that area below the demand curve and above price, this is consumer surplus. And we also say that area above supply curve and below price is producer surplus. This is only true when there are no production externalities. Here, without production externalities, this is Pareto efficient. However, let's have a look at what happens sorry, I'm trying to think. Let's say, okay, I'm going to use a different slide because I don't really, as much as those slides look really nice and pretty and correct, I am going to draw this on a different light. What I'm going to do is I'm going to draw, so if you go back and look at your lecture slides, They have, God, I forgot what it looks like. Give me a sec. They have a social demand curve, a private demand curve, and a private supply curve. But what I am going to try and draw is I'm going to try and draw a social supply curve. And I'm going to draw a social demand curve. I'm going to say that this is the aggregate supply and aggregate demand for society. Quantity, price. Okay. And so when we talk about the equilibrium point, that's your equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity. But imagine we pick a different quantity to produce. Let's say we are producing here. So this will be our marginal cost for society. Okay. But then your marginal cost for your individual will be a little bit lower. Am I right? Because imagine I'm a factory and I'm producing products, but also polluting the environment. But I don't want to really pay for filters and all that. My marginal cost is lower. So let's say my marginal cost is at this point. This is the marginal cost for an individual. This is your marginal cost for society. Okay. And so from there, from our marginal cost, this is our supply for an, apologies for that, individual. Okay, so at this particular point, this is my quantity. What am I saying here in this graph? There are some costs that are externalities, pollution from the firm. So from the firm's perspective, from the individual firm's perspective, the cost is a little bit lower. The difference between your marginal cost for society and your marginal cost for your individual, which is, try and find a different color, which is this here. That is your external marginal cost. So this is the optimum output for firm, but not for society, because the individual quantity is greater than the quantity. The individual's marginal cost is smaller because we don't take into account marginal cost for society, because we don't care about the effect on society, and this was a selfish act. In the past, we talked about, hey, do whatever you like. It will, bring us back to equilibrium. The invisible hand will work. Unfortunately, this is not going to happen because of externalities. What then is the simple solution? The simple solution here is, you know how here we talk about the external marginal cost? What we're going to replace that marginal cost with is tax. The simple solution is taxation. We said earlier that taxation is a fake inflation of the cost for the firm. It is a reminder that it's the cost of the air pollution, but the tax should be equal the external marginal cost. So what we're saying here is your supply curve for the individual plus your tax should equals your supply curve for society. It pushes the market back to equilibrium, and the producer can feel the pain of the pollution that they are creating, and this aligns the individual cost of the producer with the cost of society and takes us back to a lower quantity and a safer planet. Now, I'm going to quickly talk about the carbon tax. An example of this tax is the carbon tax. Something that we don't have anymore, but I'll give you a little bit of a history lesson here. In 2011, Julia Gillard announces a carbon pricing plan. In 2012, that carbon tax was set at $23 per ton of CO2 for big polluters. Okay, so we're making these big polluters pay $23 per ton of CO2 that they're emitting. In 2013, the opposition leader Tony Abbott at that time campaigned to repeal the tax, to get rid of the tax. And in 2014, the carbon tax was repealed. So essentially, from a time in 2012 to a time in 2014, somewhere in approximately 2 years, the emissions of regulated companies decreased by 7%. But now the carbon tax is gone. I know it's replaced by something else, but clearly it is not as effective as the carbon tax that was introduced in 2012. In a mere 2 years or less, emissions from companies decreased by 7%. Imagine what the effect would have been if the carbon tax still exists today. Okay, I have no political views on this. I'm just stating a fact. Now, let's go back to our slide. Now, we have already talked about pollution. UTION as a marginal external cost. We talk about vaccination as a marginal external benefit. And so it shifts the marginal external benefit up by that amount in the social demand curve. Now, here we use tax, and here in order to encourage more marginal external benefits, governments should provide subsidies. And so here we say, yes, the government must intervene, the government must subsidize or tax. Now, I've got 2 minutes. I'm going to try and finish negative consumption externality. That's a cost incurred by someone who's not involved in the consumption of a given good. What are some examples? Smoking. If somebody's smoking, you have a consumption that has a negative impact on others. Passive smokers, we are smelling the smoke, we didn't like it. Alcohol abuse, if you drink and drive, there are negative impacts on other people on the road. Driving increases pollution. What about positive production externalities? That's a benefit accrued to someone who's not in the production of a given good. We talk about beneficial production activities. For example, if you are a beekeeper and you have a lot of bees, they help agriculture because of the pollination process. New production technologies that increases efficiency is good for society. On-the-job training, You get more individuals trained. That's also good for society. What we are trying to do, and I'll finish here, we're not trying to punish producers or consumers. We're just trying to find a Pareto efficient solution, a win-win, because we want efficiency. We want the biggest social pie that we can get. All right, everyone, there are no questions. I'm hoping that you are doing well, that you're okay. Thank you, Trent, for being there, even though, you weren't, inundated with questions, but I'm very grateful that you are there. Thank you, everybody, for today. We will finish our public goods on Thursday, and Alberto will make a show talking about the exam. So I'm hoping that you guys truly have no questions. Have a good rest of the day, and I'll see you all on Thursday. Bye, guys.